Welcome to Report to the People, the first of the month program of the Belau Report. And we have the leaders of the public and private sector, John Wade, President of the Rochester Area Chamber of Commerce, Ken Brown, Chair of the Olmsted County Board of Commissioners, and Randy Staver, Interim President of the Rochester City Council. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome. Thank you.
Can you believe December already?
I can believe December. I can't believe necessarily how warm it is outside. But
60 degrees yesterday.
I used to remember
a little more normal.
When you got to the end of the year, things sort of slowed down, but it sounds like in this city and in this county and in this area, it's really picking up. So,
indeed,
biggest thing happening in the month of November, the month we've just completed. And Randy Staver, I'll start with you.
Well, certainly we've been doing preparations for the budget, which is the thing we're talking about now. Just some community activities. Many people are familiar with our endeavor to mitigate the crow population.
Oh yes, that started last night, the night before we recorded it.
They're still here this morning, though.
I didn't hear anything.
We saw that the crews were out. Again, this is a contract with the USDA. They have 4 crews of individuals here this week. They operate from about 4 p.m. until 7:30 a.m. So they're operating during the nighttime hours. They're using a variety of dispersal techniques, light and sound. And again, the objective of that is to essentially harass the crows when they're roosting and essentially force them to the outskirts of the city. So as you say, they began last night and we are very hopeful. One of the things we're doing, I should mention, to help keep the cost down is we have our own city staff partnering with the USDA folks. So they're riding along. We have purchased some of the same equipment so that hopefully we'll be able to continue this process throughout the winter and keep at it. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, tell us what the prospects are for it being successful in the first week.
What we've been told by the USDA folks is they have had success in other communities where they've tried this, but they were also very upfront that this will not take care of itself in 1 week. They fully expect we could call them back 2 or 3 times over the course of the winter, and that was all calculated as part of our contracted price. But again, in the intervening weeks, we'd like to use our own staff to kind of stay on top of the problem. The other thing they've told us is that we could very well have to do this for several years in a row because, again, the crows have established a very solid behavioral pattern, and we're trying to break that pattern. So this could be something we have to deal with for 2 or 3 years. So we're being very realistic about that.
People always ask, crows are protected birds, migratory birds? Or
they are. They are. As a migratory bird, they are offered some protection, although there are 2 legitimate hunting seasons, one in March and one in October, roughly.
For crows?
Yes, yes.
Oh.
So there are 2 legitimate hunting seasons. But again, when we take them in the city limits, that's a different set of rules that apply, and so we have to be very cognizant of that.
That's really interesting because you've had a lot of suggestions from netting trees to shooting them, and this is the best middle ground.
We think so. You know, as you mentioned, other ideas have been offered, anything from netting to outright poisoning and things like that. You know, we'd really like to stay away from that if we could. Certainly we can't discharge firearms in the city limits, so that's not an option available to us. So we're just trying to use very simple behavioral techniques that the USDA, again, has recommended and found successful in other communities.
We've got the University of Minnesota Rochester Raptors, and raptors go after crows, so I think we should just turn them loose.
Right, and you know, you might recall we tried that last year. We brought in some falcons that are a predator for the crows.
Owls, big enemy.
Unfortunately, those birds don't fly at the same time that the crows were here during the evening hours, so that didn't work out so well. Plus, quite frankly, I think the crows just outnumbered them.
All right, we will look forward to continuing reports on the crows and the line item in the budget for the next 5 years for the crows.
Stay tuned.
Ken Brown, the biggest activity of the county besides the election in November.
Besides the election, we went through our budget reviews. Budget is always this time.
Were you re-elected?
So I was. I squeaked by. Lucky, and I appreciate that. So the budget is all-consuming at this point in time in the county. We had a 2-day review last week and are prepared to, we've got a board meeting scheduled this week in Truth and Taxation Thursday night, and then we approve the budget, I think, the next meeting 2 weeks later.
Give our viewers the dates of that if you can, because
it's the 6th is an afternoon meeting, 3 o'clock this week, and then 7 p.m. Truth and Taxation. And then I believe the 18th is the next, would be a Tuesday, it'd be a 9 o'clock meeting a.m. So December switches things. We usually have early meeting in the second Tuesday and late meeting on the fourth Tuesday, but because of Truth and Taxation and legislative requirements, we reverse the order.
Well, I have a question, and that is, how can we do budgets either at the city or the county or the small community level when the governor is planning on doing some major tax reform for 2013, which will impact, if he changes, for example, about the property tax, that will make a big difference. It's always a guess, and we never know what the legislature is going to do, especially coming into a budget year. There are, not rumors, but ideas that Governor Dayton has as to what he would like to pursue. Most of that will not affect the current fiscal year at the state level, but we run on a calendar year basis, so it is possible that it would affect us in the second half of 2013, and we won't know that until May or so, or earlier indications on what they may do. A lot of things are being floated. Who knows what the legislature is going to look like and what the decisions are going to be made. Revenue increases, changes in the property tax. Now, there has been a working group, a task force that was run, chaired by a county commissioner from Dakota County, co-chaired, and they've come up with a nice set of recommendations as to how to deal with property tax. Minnesota is the most complex system in the nation, has the highest number of categories, and they have put forth a number of things. I have no idea if the legislature will act on any of this, but for instance, to go from 55 categories down to 5, make it much more straightforward, much more simple to calculate, and lots of things that are in between. But I have no idea what they're going to do with that. Yeah. Okay,
so we'll
John
see.
Wade, November for the Rochester Area Chamber.
I think the three things. The passage of the local option sales tax was significant for our community in a number of ways.
Yeah.
We are now going to move forward as an organization, as the Chamber of Commerce, to ensure that as those projects are let, that wherever possible, where qualifications exist, that local vendors, whether those be architectural services, whether those be contractors, that are local contractors and architects and other professional services not receive favoritism, but definitely we pay attention to those that not only helped pass a local option sales tax, making those projects even possible in the first place, but also and supported them, but their families live here. And in best value, while we've come a ways, that doesn't always necessarily give preference. When I say preference, it's not unfair preference. It is, for example, if a school project is let, and that same small architectural firm may have done business in Iowa, it doesn't count on the form that they need to fill out for consideration. So we want to make sure that as these $139.5 million worth of projects are let, that we include local, regional businesses that contribute so much to our community on a regular basis. That is in no way to disparage a construction company from the great state of Wisconsin or Iowa or Illinois or wherever that might be. It is to make sure that we are giving due, I think, respect to those businesses that are here. So we're going to be paying a lot of attention to that. We will be moving forward. A few years ago, we put together an initiative called Development Services Redesign to work collaboratively with the city to streamline the development process. We have met a lot of success with that formula. We will be looking at the same formula with the county and the city and the school district to ensure that local services are considered as we go forward with those projects. The Heritage Preservation Ordinance, which we can talk more about, but that is a significant issue that we've been working on, as well as legislative priorities. And we're just about finalizing that list. We have a number of exciting things happening in the community, but over all of that is that, and this is not a political statement about the Affordable Care Act, It is to say that the implications of the Affordable Care Act, and I'm talking about how we get our own health care that many of us are concerned about, but we are also paying very close attention to the impacts of the Affordable Care Act on our medical industrial complex, on how that, for example, will affect Mayo Clinic's continued growth and development going forward. So those are very big issues, and there's a lot happening both in November and clearly as we move forward into December.
And all providers and all businesses are going to be affected by it as
Absolutely
well.
So. Absolutely
okay.
so.
And then in December, you start the legislative orientations, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go to December.
Well, we're going to be meeting together. We have a number of meetings with the City of Rochester. We will also obviously include Olmsted County in those discussions as we look forward to a combined legislative priority list for the community. We're going to be smarter this time around. We're going to look at priorities, whether that be the convention center expansion, whether that be the destination medical community initiative, other things, so that we as a community, as we talk to our legislators, are unified in voice and certainly unified in expectation of the legislature. So we're going to work collaboratively with our legislators as well as our units of business and government.
And one other addition on the sales tax. Many of our small communities who watch this are wondering about that $5 million. Mm-hmm. And have you already started with that?
Randy, if you want to take a first crack, I would just say this about the $5 million. We believe that was strategic, and we believe it was the smart thing and the right thing to do by incenting local communities to also pay attention to their own economic development. And they do that every day. But the vitality of our neighbors is so critically important to our community. And as I always like to remind my friends that may be concerned about that, 40,000 people a day come into the city to work. Our neighborhood is very important to us. So as we go forward, the City Council last night passed an agreement between READY, Rochester Economic Development, Inc., to set up the profile for that $5 million in economic development, which is very important. The city is the backstop for all of this. All of these projects going forward will have the city's oversight and review. So not only will we see that in READY, that agreement has been completed, but we also believe, while it's not been finalized yet, that a similar arrangement will be made for the area communities. So there won't be, we're not going to tell those communities what they should do. We don't want to do that, but we want to create an environment, because it's public dollars, that there's transparency in how those dollars are spent.
Okay, Randy Staver.
Absolutely, and just again to reiterate and clarify the point John just made, the $5 million that we talked about last evening's council meeting through READY, that's out of the economic development pot. The other $5 million that we're talking about to the surrounding communities, that's a different discussion. First, I would very much agree with John that strong neighbors make for strong neighborhoods. So we very much want to be in partners with the communities that live and work close to Rochester. When the legislature inserted the $5 million into the 139.5, they didn't put very many parameters or rules around that. They indicated 17 communities, but they didn't indicate how that should be distributed, how much should be distributed. So that's left to the City Council to discuss and decide. As John mentioned, we've just begun very preliminary discussions about that, and there is some latitude there. You could take a very simple approach of simple distribution of those funds based on a per capita basis and distribute those. And again, the communities are obligated to use those funds for capital improvement or economic development projects. They can't use those funds for operational funds or things of that nature. How involved and how engaged the Rochester City Council is in vetting those projects. As John said, we certainly owe and are obligated to our voters to be accountable for how those dollars are distributed and expended. But on the same token, in the light of local control, we need those local communities to participate in that discussion and tell us, what are important projects to their community. So we're still going through that process. We have not decided as of right now how those dollars will be distributed. So stay tuned for that discussion as well.
Well, we will. We've got more news all the time.
Definitely.
Ken Brown, no coal trains. I mean, would you ever have believed that?
That was an interesting, I picked up a rumor, we had picked up a rumor that CP was considering abandoning the project and potentially even selling the line west of that area into Wyoming. I don't know that there's much utility in terms of selling, but apparently the project itself has been put on the back burner for the foreseeable future. So for our desire, we will finish the study because we need to know the end result is what the capacity of the in-town route is, what mitigation might be if it ever comes to pass, and then the study will stand on its own until something else happens relative
mostly
to
federal money or county money?
That was federal money out of the Senate Klobuchar. And will be done by March or April of next year.
Okay.
I think so too. It should be noted that that was a very smart thing to do based on what we knew at the time.
Right.
Nobody anticipated, just even a couple of years ago, the impact of natural gas that it ultimately would have on coal. And we've talked to a lot of people around this country that had no idea what that ultimately might mean to us. I do think, as Ken said and pointed out in the newspaper last night, that it's also important that we pay attention to what happens to that line coming through our community, and to not just pull back entirely and say, well, that's gone for now. When somebody else could come in, it will be purchased by someone if it is sold, obviously. And how do we want that to, what do we want? We need to pay attention to that issue, because we don't want a different problem on a different day and say, oh, well, it's gone away for the time being, which it has. We believe that was good news, but it was really based on natural gas, probably, in the economy.
Right.
So we need to also, because remember, and some people forget this, that we have always been interested in rail service. We are interested in freight rail service. We need to ensure that we have strong freight rail service. So we need to pay attention to this going forward, not just say, well, that's gone, the house fell on the bad witch, and we don't have to deal with that anymore.
The same concerns exist no matter what point in time. We still have a single line through the center of town, with Mayo investing hundreds of millions of dollars per year in this community. So we still have the same concerns no matter what happens to that line. If at some point in time whoever purchases it or CP comes back around to expand it dramatically, we still need to understand what the volume requirements are, what it will withstand, what it will support, and still discuss it. Safety and economic development and viability of our city is still paramount of interest, no matter who owns the line, no matter what happens with it. But right now it appears that we can take a break.
Okay, bring us up to date quickly on light rail and high-speed rail. This was the third one, wasn't
passenger rail study is kicked off. They're working diligently on that. I'm not sure when the first open house will be, but that work plan is set. They're starting to gather the data, and we will then look at the business case over the next year and a half plus that says what does it look like from here to terminus at the airport, and what stops, what route, and so on. But it's early. It's very early in that stage. But that will run its course, and we'll have a business case that we can, I believe, stand on that says it will require no operational subsidies, and I believe it will attract significant private interest to help build the infrastructure.
We talk about what St. Paul does and how it affects us, and this is also one that's dependent sort of on the federal government and how they deal with the fiscal cliff that they keep talking about. But
I've been reading a lot about that, and I understand, I believe, most of it. But the final impact, if they don't cut a deal, if they don't come up with something, how dramatic it will be, we'll find out come first quarter next year.
Mm-hmm. All right, waste management for the county, and then we'll go to historic preservation.
You mean in terms of what we did with we increased fees. We have not increased fees in either the service charge or the tipping fee for several years. And so this is a result of both a couple of factors. The economy, single sort recycling, we have way overachieved our expectations for recycling, which has reduced the burnable waste. We are mining old waste. And the third burner, even though we're not at capacity, has still allowed us to stop bypassing to the landfill. So we are burning everything that we can. We just don't have the same volume. So we needed to raise rates. It's been several years since we've done that. And if the public, when you look at it, if you look at your own garbage bill over the last few years, and I can show you mine from just the past year for my business or home, it's gone up fairly dramatically. but it's been no impact from the county because we have not changed tipping fee or service charge. So we're not the only ones in this game, but we needed to come around due to inflation and other factors in the economy and change the rates for that service.
Yeah, well, I think that we understand that the haulers have to raise rates at the time as you look at your own fuel bills and the impact of fixed costs on businesses right now. Just like taxes, they all get passed through. And ultimately the customer pays for those added costs. I think one of the things that we're interested in doing and talking more with Olmsted County about is what to do going forward. We understand that we have to take care of this problem in the short term with that additional tax. But more importantly, what can we do? And I'm sure the county is looking at this, we just want to better understand it so that we know what exactly we're doing. We added that third burner. Could we get, I'm sure there's a lot of great answers for this, could we pick up garbage from other places? Right. We're all recycling like crazy. Right. We didn't anticipate that necessarily would go quite as well as it's gone, but it's had an impact on that institution. And what we're going to do going forward. You know, how this is going to remain viable going forward, and how's the steam business going, by the way? You know, we're hearing other folks are saying it's kind of expensive, and it's this and it's that. So I think that to sit down together with the county and just better understand only what we have, which was a smart idea when it was decided to be done, because it's hard to have a crystal ball about where the market's necessarily going to go and that we're all going to be recycling like crazy. But really, how do we then keep that that model really sustainable going forward?
Yep. Okay. Randy Staver, you want to outline the general parts of the historic preservation ordinance, and then we'll talk about that.
Certainly. Well, in terms of logistics, we've had a fair amount of discussion on this topic over the last several months, and now on December 17th, the City Council has called for the public hearing. That's where we'll hear out this topic and hopefully come to some measure of closure. What we're left with at this point is we have two predominant versions of the ordinance that we'll be considering, and actually we're looking at a combined version of that will expedite the discussion, hopefully. But I think some of the key issues that are outstanding, there's some disagreement in terms of the size of the group, in terms of the Heritage Preservation Commission, and perhaps the makeup of that group. And I think more significant is the issue of opt-in or opt-out.
So people can either choose to be included or can choose not to be included.
Correct. In some communities, we've seen versions of an ordinance that says, if I choose to designate your property as historic, you can choose to opt out and that's it, we leave you alone. Other communities have a process in their ordinance that allows them to still vet that decision and perhaps adopt that property as part of the historic preservation list, if you will. So that's
would they review it like annually, the properties, or is this just a one-time designation?
They would start with an initial list, of course, and then as time goes on, presumably the process would allow for nominations of properties at just about any time throughout the course of the year, and then that master list is maintained. The approach that I'd really like to see, and people should not view this as a punitive sort of measure. Really, I think what we're all after is we'd like to incentivize the system so that it should be appealing to individuals that would like to preserve and continue the heritage of their properties and so forth, to do so because they see the value in that. Perhaps there are some tax credits to be reaped or some other advantages financially, but just what it contributes to the fabric of the community is important as well. So again, I'd love to see more incentives built into the system and not view this as punitive in any sense to those that would participate.
Is there a set of criteria, Randy, that people bring forward that says this looks like it should be, could be, would be a historic property, or is it just someone's opinion?
There are some criteria that are mentioned. The Secretary of Interior has some standards, but there is some latitude for discretion. What's important in one community might not be as important in another community. And the other thing that we need to understand is this isn't just about buildings. There are other aspects of heritage preservation. It could be an event that occurred, or an individual, or something of that nature. Okay. So it's fairly broad brushed in what it could go after, but there are some criteria, but they're very loose, I think.
And it starts with, I mean, What do we think of a? What do you think is a historic building, age-wise? Do you have any idea? What would you say?
I mean, for my state of mind, I'd say 100 years plus.
Right, it's 50 years or older, so 1962 or before.
Really?
So I think Randy's point is really well taken.
Interesting.
And what we really want to have is number one, what the two sides have come to believe is that we need a preservation ordinance. And we can live with a preservation ordinance. It just needs to be fair. The reason we're interested in the not only the number of seats on that commission, and the Historic Preservation Committee is proposing 11. That is far more than the state average. State average is about 8.5. We're saying 9. We're also saying that on that committee itself, it needs to be a collaborative effort of not only those that are more vocal about historic preservation, but also those that either own property or are involved in historic preservation. And we have people that are doing that. And I think one of the things that makes Rochester unique, and I've heard the arguments about, well, all these cities have it, we should have it too. What makes us unique as a community is we really work collaboratively and well together. And what we want to do is carve out a model that not only preserves our history, but does it in a most effective and efficient way, and involves collaboration. And Randy nailed it. We need to have incentives. We need to work together to develop incentives to have you, as a property owner, want to come along. I don't like unfunded mandates. I don't like telling people what they have to do, but I do like to work collaboratively to incent them to preserve a historic building, and to do that in a responsible way and look at tools that we can do together rather than some commission telling someone what they ought to do with their own private property. And that includes houses, and that includes certainly historic buildings, however you might measure that. So we want a fair process. We are proposing an opt-in with a commitment to collaboration, to work together with the commission to ensure that we come up with incentives, federal, state, and local where applicable, so that people can save their buildings and that we can preserve our history, and at the same time reflecting the fact that Rochester, Minnesota is prepared to grow. And that's not always easy to do. And you want to preserve your history, certainly, but we also want to ensure the continued growth and viability of our community, and that means jobs. And if you have a community that's not growing, it's a lot easier to preserve things, except you can't afford to do it generally. And if you look at most of the preservation efforts in this community, almost all of them, including most recently Mayowood, had Mayo Clinic not stepped in to save Mayowood, it was going to continue to slide off that hill. It's a treasure. We want to be able to preserve those. The private sector has done a tremendous job. Can we do better? Yes. Do we believe this ordinance will make it stronger? Yes, we do, and we're committed to that collaboration.
Why is the size of the commission a big deal?
Well, we looked at the averages. We looked at what is a responsible, and frankly, the
wondering
council's got 7 members. The council could have 50 members.
Yeah.
You can always say that. I think when they tend to be, whether it's the city council, the county board, units of government, 7 is a popular number in this state. And because it tends to be a workable number. I have actually visited and advocated in communities, Madison, Wisconsin, that's got over 50 council members.
Oh.
There are ways to make that more efficient.
22
We've
on the board.
covered a lot of ground. We're down at our last minute and a half, and we're mindful that December is also a month of holidays. And so I want to take a quick statement from each of you, either about the future of what's going to happen in your entity or some wishes. John Wade.
I would just say that from an entity standpoint, we want to continue to ensure that we have a community where businesses can continue to develop, grow, and prosper. And we believe we have a strong partnership with units of government to do that. I think on a personal note, we want to wish all of our members, our viewers, people in the community, the opportunity to just savor this great holiday.
Okay, Ken Brown.
I think the message from us is going forward, we have a wonderful future. Optimism is really what you need to continue to look at. Enjoy the holiday season, enjoy your families, think about people that are best in need and try to help them.
Randy Staver.
I agree. We have a lot on the financial horizon to be grateful for. We very much want to work with voters and other areas of government as we go forward. But as my colleagues have said, we really wish people just take some time, enjoy their families, and some time.
Thank you, all three, and we wish you holiday greetings, and we wish you a wonderful month of December. And we'll be back the first Monday in January. And thank you for being with us, all our viewers, and we wish you a good week and a good night.